The next thing on line 38 here, consider a retrace into volatility zone or the 21 EMA, right? And that's provided that larger scale conditions are still favorable. So this is I think a really cool thing to do. It's much easier with the algos, obviously. And so when you have the orange on orange conditions and you have the 4-hour supporting you, you can look at the larger time frames, make sure that they're supporting you. But even if you didn't, you would look at this channel, which is 200 2-hour candles, right? So 2 times 200 is 400 divided by 24 hours. That's about 16 days of overall bullish trend. Now, unfortunately, there can be a ton of volatility in this trend, but you're starting on the bottom side of it, which means that you're not late to the move, right? The move could conceivably take us back up here into the range of the 70s, which is a great place to be. And although storage is very volatile, it becomes more tame if you use very, very low leverage and really intelligent logic, like the kind we're using today. And not all setups are going to be like this. So you want to kind of keep that in mind. So with that in mind, let's go back to that statement, right? In addition to the volatility zone, which we kind of checked, and I do like the fact that I can use that green volatility cloud on its current setting for a stop loss area or an area of risk mitigation. But in addition to that, I also like to review the 21 EMA, right? So the 21 EMA is a great place to consider a zone for your stop loss, right? So in this case, you could conceivably have a trade kind of coincide with it, right? And so there you would be, and especially by the time the trade got there, you would be fine. So you could probably set it up in advance if you wanted to, leave for the day and just go for it, knowing that you're playing the 2-hour time frame, which could easily give you a full work day to go to work, come back, see if your trade hit. In a worst case scenario, let's just say you 3x'd it, you would lose about 4.5%, maybe 5%. And in a best case scenario, you are on your way up to 80%, right? And you didn't FOMO into the trade. You can already see orange has shifted to yellow. That pressure line is doing what they do, which is serving as a resistance. And theoretically, if this were to work out and you were not around, you could see if it does what you want it to do. You would have the logic of a fib line, you'd have the logic of movement monitor that's orange, you would have the logic of volatility zone, you would have the logic of 21 EMA for the 2-hour time frame specifically, serving as your stop loss zone. And in that regard, you could kind of look at it like my asymmetry is real, my target is real based on what? A channel, based on hopefully getting through a few of these resistances, right? And then this one being probably my take profit zone, like my final take profit zone. This would probably be my first take profit zone. Remember, pressure lines are greed prevention zones on the way up. So a person could literally take 30% of their position or whatever they deem prudent on the way up, and then they could close out the remainder of their position at this point when they have achieved the full goal of, in the case of a 4x leverage, 84% ROI, right? Turning, again, let's use larger numbers just for fun, turning $10,000 into $18,000, turning $1,000 into $1,800, while risking about 5-6%, right? 2.6 times 2, so yeah, about 5.2. With slippage, let's just say it's give or take about 6%. So they're risking 6% to make about 84%. That's about 16 units of reward per unit of risk. And they're not FOMOing into price action where it's at. They're going to set a trade up based on where they statistically expect price action to go to. Sorry, I didn't mean to draw that last line. And they have calculated their asymmetry, their target, their ROI all these things in advance. And again, does this mean that the trade is infallible because everything is set up properly? No, it doesn't. Anything can happen. Bitcoin can drop like a rock, and then for some reason, at that time, storage can absolutely be affected. But, this is a great setup for conditions conducive to a very high degree. And it shows what it looks like to use, multiple logic points for your stop loss zone. And then when you use those multiple stop loss points for, or those logic points for your stop loss zone, then you say, okay, so the number would be about 1.3%. If I'm the type of person that only likes to lose about 5%, like how much leverage can I responsibly use? And so that's the kind of thing we'll talk about in list 3, which we may knock out both of them in this video. We'll see what we can do. So that is really all of line 1. That's all of line 2, right? We considered the 21 EMA for our entry, right? It could also be for our entry. In this case, we used it for our stop loss. You could absolutely use it on a volatile asset for an entry. And so what would that look like, right? If somebody really wanted to be conservative, they could kind of look at it like this and just shift it down, right? So this would be using the volatility zone itself and the EMA for an entry. This is a great strategy for people who are looking to use a bit more leverage. Here you could use 5x leverage, which on storage is probably plenty because you stand to lose now about 5% plus slippage, but now you stand to gain on 5x leverage alone. You stand to gain the 21% organically, so about 105%. Let me answer Joel here for a second. Okay, done. All right, so yes, you plan to gain somewhere in the neighborhood of that 100%. And so again, plus 100% is essentially a doubling of your initial capital. I like the entrance, I like the exit, I like the take profit, I like the logic behind everything. I like the bigger picture channel that we're in for this trade, for this time frame. And then again, I would go through list 1 to make sure that conditions are not working against me. But other than that, I would be in good shape on this trade. But this at least shows you what it's like to use the pressure line, the volatility zone, the movement monitor, the 21 EMA, all in unison for potential entry or evaluating a stop loss zone. Again, in this case, relative to the 2 hour for a relatively volatile asset, storage. Okay, and we do it because we like the 4 hour breakout bar being orange. We like the movement monitor being orange. We like the volatility cloud being green. All of those things are why we do it. I would never trust, personally, the 21 EMA by itself. I want to have volume integrated. I want to have trend integrated. I want those sensitive metrics that I used to have to look at for 2 hours before I could decide what I wanted to do. And then I found that over time I was suffering from decision-making fatigue. I would end up not making the trade, or I'd make a bad decision, mostly because I was tired, or I'd come to the conclusion that I shouldn't trade because I'm tired, and I ended up wasting a lot of time. And so it's great to have a computer essentially calculate the things that need to be calculated for you in real time, and then just have colors kind of tell you when conditions are conducive. And then we still have to go through this checklist because that's how complicated and challenging trading is, right? It's not easy, which is why 90% of people fail at it, 95%. Definitely between 80 and 80 and 90, I would say. Conservatively. So just kind of keep that in mind when you feel like the checklist is too intense. It's just because it should be hard to multiply capital, and that's why not everybody can do it. So the fact you made it to list 2, I think says a lot.